This program is made possible by generous gifts from partners and viewers like you in this area.
4,000 years ago, the Creator of the universe made an everlasting covenant with Abraham. All the land, from the Euphrates to the Nile, belongs to the sons of Israel. Shock waves will shake the earth as heaven reaches down to fulfill that promise.
In the New Testament, Shimon Kephas said that Shaul's writings are very difficult to understand, and those who are ignorant of the Torah twist his words and end up destroying both themselves and the people who listen to their twisted sermons. Shaul, commonly called Paul the Apostle, constantly quoted from the Torah, the 5 books of Moses, the same scriptures that the Bereans searched to prove his teachings. But despite his repeated warnings, the modern Christian church has turned a deaf ear to God's instructions and has adopted the form, philosophy, and traditions of Babylonian sun god worship. But just as Jeremiah prophesied, in the last days the Gentiles will cry out in repentance, "Truly, we have inherited nothing but lies from our fathers. We have inherited the worship of pagan gods." I'm Michael Rood. Prepare for a rude awakening.
You fight me with your sharp sword and heavy spear, Goliath, but I fight you in the name of God.
Goliath! He's dead!
And the Israelites chased the Philistines away.
It is not comfortable to consider that the pictures held in one's mind may be an error, the pictures upon which one bases his concepts of truth or reality. David is usually pictured as a little boy with a crotch-stick slingshot going up against the giant Goliath. But David was not a little boy at the time. How do we know this? David took provisions to his brothers who were encamped in battle against the Philistine army on this hillside in the valley of Elah. A giant named Goliath, a champion in battle, stood on the other side of the valley and blasphemed the name of the Almighty, challenging any warrior of Israel to a death match to decide the outcome of the war. David was infuriated with Goliath's blasphemy and said that he would accept the giant's challenge. David earned his audience with King Saul because he was proclaiming his resume throughout the camp of Israel. David boasted that the Almighty would deliver Goliath into his hands because Yahweh had delivered him from other Goliaths. David said that while executing his duties as a shepherd, he wrestled a bear to the ground, delivered a lamb from his jaws, and beat the bear to death with a club. On another occasion, David said he grabbed an attacking lion by the beard and killed him with his bare hands. Not exactly the exploits of a 10-year-old child. When King Saul was crowned, he was head and shoulders above every man in the kingdom. He was a big man to whom everyone looked up. Now, several years later, when David accepts the challenge of the giant Philistine, Saul compelled David to wear the king's armor to fight Goliath. David put on Saul's full set of royal armament and cinched the king's sword around his waist. But before the battle, David requested that he be allowed to fight without the armor, not because it didn't fit him, but because he hadn't proven Saul's armor in battle. But David knew what he could do with a military sling and stone. King Saul's armor had to fit David in order for him to put it on, or for the king to even suggest it. David, too, was a big man. David used Goliath's massive steel sword to lop off the giant's head after he broke his skull with a rock. Later, David used the same sword as a personal combat arm. David was a powerful young man of towering stature, but tradition has consistently portrayed him and the other men and women in the scriptures as one-dimensional cartoon characters. The historical accounts that men have died to protect are now treated like common fairy tales in Western society. Numbered sound bites, called verses, have been wrestled completely out of context and interpreted in a way that must make Shaul and Moses roll over in their graves. In Shaul's letter to the saints in Colossi, he instructs those who have accepted Messiah YAHSHUA to be very diligent in their endeavor to follow him. It is stated poetically in the King James Version, "As ye have therefore received Christ Jesus the Lord, so walk ye in him." It is amusing to hear some people refer to Jesus Christ as though he were the son of Joseph and Mary Christ. Christ is a Greek title, not the Lord's last name. I prefer to use the Hebrew title Mashiach, in English Messiah, in place of the Greek term Christos or Christ, because the Greeks called all of their gods, from Adonis to Zeus, Christos, which means anointed. When I use the term Messiah, however, I am referring to the very one of which Moses spoke, "You must listen to that prophet." I also prefer to use the Lord's Hebrew name, YAHSHUA, rather than his Gentile nickname, Jesus. YAHSHUA is a compound name in Hebrew that means Yah, the short form of Yahweh, is our Yeshua, or salvation. Yahweh Yeshua, or commonly YAHSHUA. I love the name YAHSHUA. I also use Yeshua, which is the same as saying Savior. Shaul's words are written to all followers of the Messiah, but his warning to the Colossians is specifically to Gentiles raised in the midst of a pagan sun-god worshiping culture. You beware, lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit, after the tradition of men, after the rudiments of the world, and not after Messiah. Shaul said very clearly, you who have accepted the Messiah are responsible to follow him. You are to be wary, watch your back, lest any man spoil you. The word spoil is a military term. When an army conquers a city, all of the possessions that the inhabitants acquired through a lifetime of toil immediately become spoil for the conquerors. The any man of whom Shaul refers are the men of the pagan culture of Colossi. These are Gentiles who are separated from the covenants of Israel and have no hope in the true God. These are the men who would conquer and spoil the believers through two primary methods, philosophy and vain deceit. Rudimentary explanation. Philosophy is a Greek compound word that is derived from phileo, love, and Sophia, the pagan goddess of wisdom. Phileo Sophia, philosophy, the love of wisdom. Now, there is nothing wrong with wisdom. In fact, Solomon asked for wisdom and was rewarded with vast wealth as well. But the Greek concept of wisdom has its roots in self-worship, and the essence of Greek philosophy is one's worldview, whatever it happens to be. After the basics of food, clothing, and shelter are satisfied, the primary need of man is to understand the purpose of this conscious physical experience we call life. As intelligent beings, we need a reason to be, and we need a mechanism for our existence. Animals have no such spiritual drive. A cow is just content being milked. And if a man can be misled into constantly chasing better food, better clothing, and better shelter, he will degrade into a simple tax-paying consumer who will get milked all the way to the grave, never understanding the purpose of life. When one admits that he does not know the meaning of life and he does not know whether or not there is a creator who has a plan for this universe, he refers to himself as agnostic. In Greek, without, gnostic, knowledge. It is the haunting admission that he just doesn't know. Atheists have a more refined philosophy or worldview. Without, theos, God. They envision a world in which there is no God. They are no longer haunted by the questions that torment the agnostics as they search for meaning, because atheists have a religion that comforts them. It is called evolution. Evolution answers the question of how we got here without there being a creator to whom we would be responsible. Yes, evolution is a religion, but one that lacks any shred of evidence in the scientific world, and in fact breaks several of the proven laws of science, such as the second law of thermodynamics. But in the religion of evolution, faith doesn't require facts. It is based on the worldview that there is no creator, and no amount of evidence will shake those who find solace in denial and ignorance. I too have a philosophy, a worldview. It is succinctly expressed in Shaul's letter to the Messianic Hebrews, chapter 11, verse 6. God is, and he is a rewarder of them that diligently seek him. America was founded upon the principle that all men are created by God with absolute rights, that no politician, priest, or king has the authority to alienate from the individual. Americans unanimously agreed that among these God-given rights was the right to pursue happiness. The founding fathers, such as Thomas Jefferson, suggested that pursuing God's will for individual lives is the essence of the happiness that we have the right to diligently seek. As the unanimous Declaration of July 4th, 1776 proclaims, true Americans believe in the Creator. And the Founding Fathers taught that men must govern themselves as individuals according to God's 10 Commandments. With God-given rights come God-given responsibilities, not do what thou wilt, the philosophy of the atheist. Let's continue. Beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit. The word vain in the King James Version of the Bible can most effectively be translated into the vernacular as prosperity. It is a pursuit of things that so easily deceives us. We read in the Gospel of Matthew that Satan tempted the Messiah with all the power, wealth, and glory of the world. Satan offered to give it to him if he would simply worship at his feet. The promise of personal power, wealth, and glory is the carrot that Satan continues to hang before our nose. The pursuit of riches keeps us chasing the dream all the way to the grave, instead of following after the Messiah. Beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit, after the tradition of men. The word after is used as a position in place. Those who have accepted the Messiah were to be very careful to follow after him, and to be wary of the pagans who would conquer them with their twisted worldview and cause them to chase after the riches that the world offers. How would this deception occur? By innocently following after the traditions of men. The English word tradition is derived from the Latin tradiere, which means to lay into the hands of another. By following what the pagans attempt to lay in our hands, we can be stripped of the reward for which we have worked an entire lifetime. When we return, we will look at one of these pagan traditions that has destroyed the lives of innumerable Christians who thought that they were following the Messiah. We read in the scroll of Ruth that Elimelech and his family left Bethlehem during a drought and sojourned east of Israel in the land of Moab. The Moabites were worshippers of the pagan god of prosperity, Chemosh, It was the same cast iron, pot-bellied god that their kindred the Ammonites worshipped by the name of Molech. They both wore the Phrygian cap, the official headwear of both Tammuz in Babylon and later Mithra in Rome. At the time of the winter solstice, December 25th on the ancient calendar, they had a public child mass, mass meaning sacrifice. The priests stoked the iron image of the enthroned Chemosh with wood and burning pitch, turning their pot-bellied god into a cherry red furnace. The people made long lists of their desires and recited them to the god of prosperity just before they put their infant children into the red-hot lap of their god with his Phrygian cap. As the babies were incinerated in the December 25th child mass, the people were assured that their sacrifice would be rewarded in the coming year. On the same day, south of Israel, the Egyptians worshiped their sun god, Ra. An Egyptian hieroglyph depicts Ra castrating himself, just as Greek legend tells of the god Attis performing the same surgery on himself. Worshippers of Ra would hang gold and silver balls on an upright palm tree, as Jeremiah reports it, and place their decorated gifts to the sun god under the tree decorated with the gold and silver testicles of Ra. This vain custom was performed on Ra's birthday, December 25th. When Israel adopted this custom, they used the evergreen tree, which they cut out of the forest with an axe and erected it in their homes with the help of a hammer and nails so that it would not topple over, and decked it with gold and silver balls. God calls this festival an abomination. In the 1600s, it was illegal to have a Christmas tree or even a Christmas service in America. The Pilgrims knew that it was pure pagan sun god worship. Now, don't be offended because I'm telling you these things. Be offended because these abominations have gone unchallenged by modern paganized Christianity. These occult practices have changed very little since being brought into America. A month before the birthday of Tammuz, we have our children make endless lists to the cherry red, pot-bellied god of prosperity, and then we place our terrified children into the lap of this god who sits on his throne in the shopping mall wearing his Phrygian cap. On Christmas Eve, he will come down the fireplace chimney and deliver gifts under the evergreen tree decorated with gold and silver balls. Our children will kneel before the evergreen phallic symbol as they receive the blessings from their God. And parents charge their credit cards to the limit to make certain that their children are not disappointed when their God makes good on his promise of prosperity. Months before the event, the world shifts into high gear to promise the most fulfilling experience of life when our children open boxes filled with their greatest hopes and dreams. More stuff. The reality is never as great as the carrot dangled before our nose. Our children are disappointed before the last package is opened, and we are in debt for the next 9 months to try to pay for this sinking feeling of despair. That morning's event set up a chain reaction that results in the highest incidence of suicide in the entire year. Instead of putting our children into the fiery red hands of Chemosh on Child Mass Day, we abort millions of babies during the rest of the year and then celebrate our affluence by lavishing gifts upon business colleagues whom we don't even like, just to show that the God of prosperity is still smiling on us approvingly. It is the same God that is served. The names of the gods just changed from culture to culture. Now you can begin to see why Shaul was so intent on warning us not to follow after the traditions of the heathen. We start by accepting one seemingly harmless tradition, a tradition which, like yeast, grows until it contaminates our entire world. Now, Christmas Day is the biggest movie day in America. We can't wait to escape the reality that we created. Beware lest any man spoil you through philosophy and vain deceit, by following after the tradition of men, and following after the rudiments of the world, and not following after Messiah. Rudiments are best described as the individual elements that make up the whole, like the stones in the wall that make up this watchtower. Shaul implies that we can be deceived one brick at a time until one day we wake up in a prison that we have built for ourselves. we will have followed after the things of this world and not even realize that we have been led away from following the Messiah. Because of our general ignorance of the Torah, many people fail to realize that Shaul continually quotes the Torah throughout his writings. Devarim gives the basis of his warning to the Gentile believers. Take heed to thyself, or you beware, that thou be not snared or spoiled by following them. Whom? The pagan sun god worshippers. Thou shalt not inquire how these nations serve their gods, and do the same unto Yahweh thy Elohim. Everything they do is an abomination. Yahweh hates that they have burned their sons and daughters as a sacrifice on the altars of their gods. When God created Adam, he knew he was creating a party animal. But he gave clear instructions on how he wants his people to party. 3 times a year you will have a festival, a feast to me, in the way I prescribe. The next several verses from Shaul's letter remind us that when we accept the Messiah, our old sinful ways are to die and we are to become a new creation. When we are obedient in baptism, our old man and the sins of the flesh are buried with him. Shaul then gives a powerful summation. Therefore, let no man judge you. The word therefore is a causal conjunction. Because you have died to this world and its godless heathenism, and because you are responsible to follow the Messiah and keep yourself from being taken hostage by the pagan cultures in which you find yourself, therefore you are not to let any heathen sun god worshippers judge you in meat, or in drink, or in respect of a holy day, or of the new moon, or of the Sabbath, which are a shadow of things to come. All of the elements embedded in the feast of the Lord are actually prophetic shadow pictures of good things to come. They are the means by which the Creator tells us the things that the Messiah must fulfill. But the pagans want to put us under their rules and rituals. They want us to follow their traditions and serve their gods. I refuse to subject myself to their perverted system. They will not be my judge. But if they cannot judge me in what I can or cannot eat, or in how I respect the biblical holy days, which are all reckoned by the appearance of the new moon, or the celebrating of God's Sabbaths, then who is to judge what celebrations we enjoy? The body of Messiah. The King James translators wrote, "But the body is of Christ." They italicized the word is to tell the reader that the word is was not in the original text, but the body is of Christ does not make any sense in context. Shaul's instructions started with, therefore, let none of these pagans judge you. Then it lists several things of which you are not to allow them to judge you. But, Shaul contrasts, if these pagans are not to judge you in the things that you celebrate, who is to judge? The body of Messiah. Yes, the Spirit-filled followers of the Messiah who, like the Bereans, are not ignorant of the Torah. They alone are qualified to judge how we now celebrate the Feast of the Lord, the shadow pictures of good things to come. The temple in Jerusalem is in ruins. The Levitical priesthood is in disarray. But does that mean that I cannot celebrate the shadow pictures of good things to come? God forbid! Celebrating the feast is the most pure, honest, wholesome worship experience afforded the follower of the Messiah. The feast of the sun god worshippers, on the other hand, are dark shadows of child sacrifice and Babylonian fertility rites. Shaul closes his exhortation with, therefore, let no man beguile you or trick you to spoil you of your reward. If your old way of life was buried with the Messiah, and you died from following after the rudiments of the world, why are you subjecting yourself to their rules and regulations by following after the commandments and doctrines of men? It is blasphemous how some Christian preachers categorize the feast of the Lord, the living oracles of Yahweh, as the doctrines and commandments of men. Shaul would never refer to any of the commandments in the Torah as coming from man. No, Shaul is referring to the perverted traditions that were becoming and have now become embedded into the modern Christian experience. Get a grip on it, Shaul says. You are no longer part of the sick, twisted world of pagan sun god worship. So step into the beauty of the prophetic shadow pictures of good things to come, the feast of the Lord. I'm Michael Rood. Join us again next time for A Rood Awakening. And I'll see you when the smoke clears.
This month, for your gift of $40 or more, Michael Rood would like you to have as his gift to you Reuven Prager's thought-provoking DVD, Levite on Duty, Restoring Ancient Israelite Customs and the Rebuilding of the Jerusalem Temple, and this historically accurate replica of the Jewish shekel.
What was our first act of rebellion? Was to make our own independent coinage. No more face of a foreign god on the front, no more eagle on the back. We made our first revolt shekels and half shekels.
If you give $120 or more, Michael will include this colorful micro talit. Or for your gift of $250 or more, Michael will include a full-size talit or beged ivri.
This is actually what a talit was before it became a prayer shawl. Some of you might be familiar with this as the seamless garment, woven from the top throughout.
Call the number on your screen or visit our website at www.aroodawakening.tv to have these wonderful gifts Michael has picked especially for you. After 40 years of labor, including 3 decades of restoring the ancient biblical Hebrew calendar, together with the experiences that accompany years of living in Jerusalem and the Galilee, Michael Rood presents the inspired gospel records in chronological order to advance you in your lifetime quest for truth. And now you can order your copy today. You can get the chronological gospels in 3 different ways. For your purchase of $64, you can order your own copy of the Chronological Gospels Bible. Or for your purchase of $117, you can receive the Chronological Gospels Essential Package. Or for your purchase of $347, you can receive the Chronological Gospels Scholars Package. Call today to receive your copy of the Chronological Gospels Bible or Package Set. Don't miss your opportunity to be blessed in the ways of the Messiah. Call or visit our website today.